The voice of God, John C. Scott, taking a break for a week, and instead we are treated to the sweet sounds of Aunt Lovey. I am humbled and honored to be joined by one of the most versatile and sensitive guitar players the world has ever seen over the last half century. A man who grew up rooted in the blues and eventually made the evolutionary journey to jazz and R&B. Today he remains a vibrant and spiritual force in the world of music, and I am pleased to welcome Omaha, Nebraska's own Calvin Keys. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, Calvin.
Right on, Jay. Nice for you to have me.
Well, it's really an honor to have you. I'm just curious as to the last time or if you've ever done a radio interview.
Of course.
I wanted to ask you, Calvin, straight off, how did growing up, you grew up in Omaha, and I wanted to ask you, how did your parents initially wind up there?
Well, my granddad, Mr. Walter A. Smith Sr., moved to Omaha, Nebraska because of the working conditions. The packing houses were hiring. And that was one of the top businesses in Omaha, was working at the packing house, the meat packing centers. And he raised a family of 14 working at the packing house. And I think he moved there from Arkansas.
Was it a very segregated town at that time? I know you said you lived in the north section of Omaha, but I have never been there, so I just wanted to give you an idea of the audience, what it looked like from the population standpoint, black and white.
Well, it was quite a few African Americans there because they were able to work in the packing houses and raise their families with some type of, insurance and health benefits and so on and so forth. And like I said, my grandfather he had 14 kids.
Right.
I was his first grandchild. My mother was the third child out of the 14. And she was born in Hiawatha, Kansas. They were en route from Arkansas to Omaha, Nebraska. And she was born in Kansas on the way to Omaha. And when they got to Omaha, he got a job, and the rest of the 14 kids were born, and that's where I was born. And so we ended up there as the Smith family. And quite naturally, I lived on the north side. I don't know why it was like that, but on the south side of Omaha, they had predominantly a black area, African-American area, too, called South Omaha. But we ended up on the north side of Omaha, which I don't know why. But I guess it's because of the, I think the prices were much lower in terms of rent and so on and so forth. So, like I said, I don't know why it ended up being in Omaha, the north side of Omaha, and which was predominantly the black side of Omaha also.
You know, as a young boy growing up in Nebraska, in Omaha, you were surrounded by music your whole life. Your great-grandmother had a piano in the house. You learned how to play the spoons, which is essentially that's banging, basically keeping rhythm with spoons. Is that what am I right on that?
Yes, you take two spoons and put them together, and you get a certain sound. And you would play them off of the top of your legs, like the ham bone was another thing we did with our hands, which made up rhythms, and we communicated with the rhythms. And, it was like a drummer, I guess, a percussionist. And that was part of my bloodline, rhythm. And like I said, I think it was predominantly the same thing with most of the African Americans because, we communicated with the drums from Jump Street over in Africa. And I guess it, evolved with us as we moved from there to here.
I have a question. was it just easier to find things percussively to bang on? It was just you couldn't afford the higher end instruments, whether it be horn or wind, and so the percussive instruments were just readily available in Africa. Or can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I guess that had something to do with it, but like I said, the rhythms were, and the drums, a way of communication,
right,
in Africa too. And I don't know if it was per se. What kid don't bang on something at some point?
Right.
It ain't got to do with no color. It's just part of growing up, you know. And, you know, in Omaha, I was living in the projects, and it was very integrated because I had white neighbors, you know, and I didn't know nothing about no segregation until I got older. Because, you know, in my neighborhood in the projects, you know, I had white neighbors. And I think their father was he was at the Alford Air Force Base. He was an airman. And I don't remember their names, but I know we used to play with each other. And he had two twin sisters that were very attractive. And being a young man, you know, I'm attracted to females. But like I said, if somebody came into the neighborhood who was a stranger and started something, we would all band together and fight if we had to.
It was a community. It was a community.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. And that was, you know, like I remember that much of it. That was before I started even thinking about the guitar.
Now, segueing in that, you know, you were banging on spoons, and your dad kind of aspired to be a drummer, but I know that it was your Uncle Ivory who changed your life in a musical sense.
Yeah.
And I know it was a pivotal moment, so let's take some time and go through that.
Well, my dad wanted to be a drummer. He had good rhythms, but, you know, during that time, musicians were looked upon as a no-no because of the drugs, alcohol, being womanizers and everything. So, you know, my mom didn't want me bothered with music at first. She didn't want to be into music. But after she seen that I wanted to actually get into it, she encouraged me. And I remember when I had to go on the road for the first time, she said one thing. She said, I don't want you to be a musician, but if you're going to be one, try to be the best. And she said, one thing I want you to remember, son, and I don't want you to ever forget it. And I said, what's that, Mom? She said, be careful, because you always get what you want.
Wow.
It took me 30 years.
Good or bad, right?
She was saying. She said, be careful. You always get what you want. That's what we strive for in this lifetime, is getting what we want or what we think we want. And, you know, they said life doesn't begin until you're 40. It takes you 40 years to learn yourself to the point where you can put together what you want and go after it. From my experiences.
I mean, I still feel very much like I'm evolving as well. From just becoming more worldly, growing up, getting married, having a child, and you know, I know that had an impact on you as well. And
everyone, that's the ultimate goal of being a human being.
Calvin, you were rooted in the Delta blues, and you were just, you know, enamored with your uncle's playing, and the idea that you were sneaking downstairs to take his little amplifier and his guitar and to play some chords. The cops were banging on the door. Were you a lot to handle at that point? I mean, you were pretty gung ho about going in the blues direction at that point.
Well, at that point, I was just fascinated by the guitar itself. And, you know, my uncle, like I said, he used to play the blues. And when he came home from work, and I'd sit there and watch him. And I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to play the guitar. And so I just sneak down in the basement, and when he was at work, and I got home from school, and hook it up like I watched him do, and start figuring out certain little things. And he told me and my two cousins, if he ever caught us with the guitar, he was going to do some damage.
Yeah, he's going to whip you up.
But you know, I was young and stubborn. I didn't care nothing about that. next thing I know, I'm down there dealing with this guitar and learning a few things. And so one evening he came in and caught me. Because he was working on construction and it was raining, and you can't work on construction when it's raining. And I didn't know. I'm in the basement. So he came in and caught me, and he said, I know you've been coming down and playing my guitar, nephew, because Mama told me. That was my grandmother. And he says, play something for me. And I played a little old lick I seen him play. And he said, how'd you learn how to do that? I said, watching you. And I played some other stuff that I'd figured out from listening on the radio. And he said, well, how'd you learn how to do that? I said, well, I figured out this and so on, so on, so on, so. And he said, wow. And I said, Unc, I'm working at a car wash on the weekends. And I said, as soon as I get me enough money saved up, I'm going to buy me a guitar. He said, really? I said, yeah, oh, yeah. He said, well, you can have that one. So he seen something, evidently. And so I took the guitar and a little bitty amp home, and living in the projects. When I got home from school all night long, I was up with that guitar in my hands. And eventually the police would knock on my door at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, young man, would you turn your guitar down because people are trying to sleep?
It was a little amp, but you were getting a lot of output, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little old 110-inch speaker in it, but, at 2 o'clock in the morning, nothing up, no cars running or nothing, and it's very quiet so people could hear. I got it turned up. So that was the beginning. I had no idea I would become a professional musician or guitar player. But, like I said, the Creator has a plan for us all.
You were growing up in a blues-centric environment, and I know you told me earlier your mom was skeptical because of the drugs and because of the influences and the womanizing and all that stuff. But you were just engulfed. You all the sounds of the radio, the T-Bone Walkers, the Albert Kings, Al Collins, and eventually you went on tour with Little Walkin' Willie. But I'm trying to imagine the conversation in the kitchen with your mom at 14 when you're asking her, Ma, I gotta go.
Well, actually, I was a little old. I was 17 because I had all my credits to graduate, and that was her problem. That was her thing. She said, well, if you getting ready to graduate, so, if you go on the road with him, how you going to graduate? I said, well, Mother, I got enough credits to graduate, so that's not a problem. And so I really wanted to take that advantage of going on the road with him. And so I told her, I said, Mom, I guess I'm going to have to disobey you this time. She said, I beg your pardon. I said, yeah, well, I'm going to go on the road with Mr. Little Walking Willie if I have to sneak out while you sleep. And she had taught me to be very honest and upfront. And so she said, well, if you put it like that, she said, I don't want you to be a musician, but if you just going to be one, try to be the best. She encouraged me when she seen that I was serious.
Right.
And she said, the one thing I want to say to you, I don't want you ever to forget, be careful, because you always get what you want. And that was the beginning of it. I went on the road with Little Walking Willie, and, we went to St. Louis, Missouri for the first time. I never will forget it, at the Riviera Ballroom. We left there and went to Cleveland, Ohio. There's a place called Gleason's. We followed Big J. McShann into Cleveland Gleason's. He had a hit record out there, Something on Your Mind. I never will forget that. And then we were there for 2 weeks and left 2 weeks and went to McKeesport, Pennsylvania, which was a suburb. It was a DWIN, Dave's Walnut Inn. And we did 2 weeks there, and then he put me back on the train back to Omaha.
I wanted to ask you, before you got back on that train, you were running into a lot of jazz guys on those tours.
Well, yes, I was running into different musicians. I think in the lobby of the Rose, it's called the Rose Room, in the Majestic Hotel where I stayed in Cleveland, Jimmy Smith was playing. And I had, I just heard him playing as we were going by, but I had no idea what I was listening at, And finally, Willie's guitar player came back. I don't even really remember his name, but I remember that after 4 4 weeks with Wooly. He came back, and I assumed that he must have got 30 days for drunken driving or something.
Sure.
And he got up and played, and it was like, whoa. I almost crawled under the table because, everything then was a challenge, quite naturally. And but he was very cordial with me and very outgoing. He showed me a couple of cards and gave me a few pointers and inspired me to keep on doing it. And so I got back to Omaha. Like I said, when I got back to Omaha, I was done. I never recovered from that. I graduated, and then my mother said, "What are you doing next?" I said, "I'm going to Kansas City." "Well, what you going to Kansas City for?" I said, "Because my dad is there, and I think the music scene is a little better than here." And that's when I went to Kansas City and got a trio and started playing the blues on 12th in Woodland at a club called the Nightingale. Harry Bruno was the owner, Italian, and he took a liking to me for some reason, and I worked there 7 nights a week and 6 matinees, and I was getting $15 a pop.
Now, I wanted to say, that is grueling. That is grueling work, although obviously it was musical to a certain point. But from an emotional standpoint, it's kind of grueling. And I was wondering if you could tell us, during those sets, did you have standard set lists, or did you vary things and keep it interesting? Do you play a lot of original stuff, because it can get kind of redundant, no?
Yeah, but during that time, I wasn't thinking about no original stuff. I just wanted to play as much as I could. I'm 17, 18 years old. I didn't get tired. It was just being able to go in a bar and play. Being underage and all that played a part. But I weathered the storm, and like I said, that's really how I learned how to play. And I remember Reuben Wright was the bass player, and then I had several drummers. And I was playing what I knew, and was learning new songs as they came out. Like I used to listen to Stan the Record Man from Shreveport, Louisiana at a certain time at night. We could get him, and he had all the new recordings coming out of down south, which, that's how they broke records. And with Bobby Blue Bland, Little Junior Parker, and all the blues players, Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, they would all come out with different new songs, and that's how I kept abreast on what was happening. And I didn't sing. I couldn't sing, but
I've never heard your voice, though.
No, I couldn't sing, but I just played as much as I could.
Sure.
Played all those instruments and stuff. All those songs. And that was the beginning of it.
You got on tour. Your first major gig was with Frank Edwards, who was a saxophone player, but he was in that band. He was playing the Hammond B3.
Yeah. Well, after I stayed in, Kansas City for several years, I ended up going back to Omaha. And I got befriended by Mr. Paul B. Allen, who was the club owner. And Dorothy, his wife, took a liking to me for some reason, and they encouraged me to play. And I played in his club. As a matter of fact, when I got my first real guitar, Mr. Paul Allen co-signed for it. And I remember speaking with him later on, and I said, "Paul, you did a very beautiful thing for me, co-signing for me to get that guitar." And he said, "Cal, I wanted to mention that to you." He said, "Out of all of the musicians that I helped get instruments," he said, "you're the only one that ever paid for yours." I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "I knew you would become something because you paid for your instrument, made them monthly payments, and I never had a problem. And you ended up paying for it, and he said, I knew you were going to amount to something."
Wow.
I said, wow.
I
got a Gibson.
Go ahead.
Barney Kessel, double cutaway Gibson guitar. He co-signed for me to get it, $500 and something. And I'd make my monthly payment every month, and I finally got it to the point I paid for it, and I owned it.
Says
But I didn't know. It was just something that you did. That was one of the best guitars I've ever had in my life.
It says something about honesty and authenticity, and that seemed to be something that was inside of your soul from a very early stage. Here we're joined by Calvin Keys, an amazing guitar player and a humanitarian, and just a beautiful soul, and feel fortunate to have him on here. Calvin, we got a few minutes before we take a break, but I wanted to ask you, I talked to Pat Martino last week, and he told me that he and Charles Earland dropped out of high school.
Uh-huh.
And one of the first things they did was go to a live gig in Atlantic City, and they saw Kenny Burrell and Jimmy Smith.
Uh-huh.
And he said that Charlie Earland dropped the saxophone the next day and started playing bass lines on the Hammond B3 because Jimmy's output was that strong.
Yeah.
And as I did research for you, I noticed that Frank Edwards, you guys were trying to emulate a similar kind of sound.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to figure out if you could explain what was so just new and amazing and revolutionary about what Jimmy Smith was doing at that time.
Well, if you listen to some of the interviews that Chess did, the guys that started Blue Note music, them brothers, what was the name of them? I can't remember them right off the top. But anyway, one of the brothers was so much in love with Jimmy's playing. He said if he could have, he would have quit the record business and managed Jimmy and followed him just to hear him play. So that was the type of impact that he had brought up on the music scene, man. He impacted the music scene as much as Charlie Parker did. Bird.
Wow.
And that's saying, he took a Hammond B3 organ and locked up in a garage for a year or so. And next thing, when he came out, he had a whole new thing about this music with the Hammond B3 organ. I think his wife was a piano player, and she taught him how to play. Basically, that's what I heard, and he took it and transformed it and put all that information to that organ. And, when he hit the scene, that turned the whole music scene around. It was like a whole new world opening up, man.
But before that time, the Hammond was used in gospel settings? Or
It was used all over. The organ was just part of it. I worked with an organ player named Jackie Davis, who played nothing but cocktail organ in all the cocktail clubs with a tuxedo on every night. No, that was one part of it, but it was a little different than what Jimmy did. Jimmy he was a bebopper, a jazz organ player. And like I said, we heard the organ, but it was in a gospel setting in church or something to that effect, but Jimmy took it and turned it all the way around.
We're talking with Calvin Keys, a legendary guitar player. When we come back, we're going to do a whole lot more talking to Calvin about his career and his family life and what he's doing now. Calvin, hang tight. Okay, my friend?
Yes, sir. No problem.
We'll be back.
Let's do it.
This is Tucson's Jolt.
It's strange and wonderful.
You have a firm grasp of the obvious.
KJLL, South Tucson.
CNN Radio. I'm Barbara Hall. President Obama has signed a short-term funding bill to keep the federal government running until Friday. It allows Congress time to pass a budget for the remainder of the current fiscal year. CNN's Dana Bash reports there was some give and take on both sides.
The overall spending that they cut was $38.5 billion for the rest of the year. Now, that's $20 billion less than Republicans had wanted, about $40 billion more than Democrats, where they had started.
The deal was reached barely an hour before the government ran out of money. Libyan rebel forces successfully fought back against Muammar Gaddafi's troops in the key city of Ashdabia Saturday. African Union leaders are holding talks trying to find a way to end the bloody standoff. 21-year-old Rory McIlroy still holding on to a 2-stroke lead at the Masters. Jason Day is in second at 9 under par. The most trusted name in news, this is CNN Radio.
I need mechanics I trust to keep my car up and running, and the Sears Auto Center's got them. They have ASE certified technicians, so my car always gets expert maintenance from mechanics I can count on.
April is National Car Care Month, and we want to make sure you're ready to hit the road this spring. So come in now and save $40 on a spring maintenance package. Plus, through April 30th, get an American Express gift card worth up to $100 by mail with the purchase of 4 Bridgestone tires. Visit SearsAuto.com for more great deals. Sears Auto Center. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
If you want your lawn to look lush and green, it's time to step things up. Scott's 4-step annual program makes it easy. From an early spring feeding that also stops crabgrass before it starts, to late spring nourishment and weed control, to protection from the high summer heat, to building strong, deep roots for an early spring green up. Step up your lawn care today. Buy the Scott's 4-step annual program exclusively from the people you trust, the folks at your independent garden center and hardware store.
I need mechanics I trust to keep my car up and running, and the Sears Auto Center's got them. They have ASE certified technicians, so my car always gets expert maintenance from mechanics I can count on.
April is National Car Care Month, and we want to make sure you're ready to hit the road this spring. So come in now and save $40 on a spring maintenance package. Plus, through April 30th, get an American Express gift card worth up to $100 by mail with the purchase of 4 Bridgestone tires. Visit SearsAuto.com for more great deals. Sears Auto Center. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
Could switching to Geico really save you 15% or more on car insurance? Is texting getting way out of hand? You know, I can't... Oh, please. Oh, that is funny. Where was I? Oh, yes, about texting. Pardon me. LOL, you are my BFF. So, like I was saying...
Switch to Geico now and you could save hundreds on your car insurance. For a free rate quote, visit geico.com to see how much you could save. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. One of the first things I wanted to do when I moved to Tucson was find authentic Chinese cuisine. After a tip from the Chinese Student Association, I headed over to Badar Chinese Restaurant. Well, it's been 7 years, and I have never looked back. Located at 7321 East Broadway Boulevard, Badar has been a family-run operation since 1992. The award-winning chef produces succulent dishes from sizzling ginger chicken to salt and pepper shrimp. The thing that separates Badar from the rest is that the chef procures ancient oriental dishes with the exotic island flair of Taiwan. Most importantly, there are no gimmicks or razzle-dazzle at Badar. You won't find any flat-screen TVs or karaoke machines. Badar is a place to go enjoy good food and spend time with your family. It exudes peace and tranquility after a long week of work. So come down and check out Badar Chinese Restaurant. Hong Hao Chu. It's that good. Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Being a father, I know there is nothing more important than your child's health. And nobody is more dedicated to children's health in Southern Arizona than Dwayne Dyson. Dr. Dyson is Tucson's finest pediatrician and has devoted much of his professional career to improving the lives of children. Located at 4530 East Camp Fort Lowell, Dr. Dyson's resume speaks for itself. After doing his undergraduate work at Cal Berkeley, his schooling took him to Morehouse School of Medicine, where he mentored young adolescents about the need for pediatric physicians in Atlanta, and worked extensively with infants at the Texas Children's Hospital. The special thing about Dr. Dyson is that while his in-house care is exceptional, he also prepares families about what to expect once they leave the office. Dr. Dyson provides comprehensive and honest analysis for all of his patients. Dr. Dyson and his family live and work in Tucson because he knows how vibrant and diverse the community is. He is committed to procuring a robust family health center that can instill trust and alleviate the concerns of parents. Like I said, his resume speaks for itself. For more information, check out DysonPediatrics.com. When Coffee Times first opened, many wondered how this standalone coffee hut could survive among the beasts of Java lore. But some 10 years later, the answer is a resounding yes. Located at 3401 East Speedway Boulevard, Coffee Times specializes in many different drinks from mocha fraps to lattes to my personal favorite, the Ice Power Coffee. The best part about Coffee Times is their convenient two-way drive-thru, lunch menu, and supreme service. Not to mention their weekly special. The next time you're in the area, head over to Coffee Times on Speedway between Alberton and Country Club. It will definitely kickstart your day.
Hi, this is Tommy DiMaggio. When your friends or relatives come to beautiful Tucson and you have already taken them to the Desert Museum in Sabino Canyon too many times, it's time for something different. What's different, you ask? Purple Mountain Pack Goats. That's me, Tommy DiMaggio, and my wonderful goats. We've been leading hikes in the Coronado National Forest for 15 years. We take people of all ages and abilities on beautiful hikes in the surrounding mountains and deserts. I provide great meals, animal companionships. We have day hikes or overnight hikes. We have been featured in Arizona Highways, the Sunday London Times travel section, National Geographic Canadian Travel Magazine. For information or for your personal hike, call 403-4056 or visit us on the web at azpackgoat.com or call 403-4056. Remember, bring your field guide, camera, and imagination. We'll bring the rest. A great lunch carried by the goats. 403-4056 or visit us on the web, azpackcoat.com.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Be a part of a new coalition with Jake Feinberg. The second half of his show starts right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Jake Feinberg Show. We're joined today by jazz guitarist Calvin Keys, rooted in the blues and made an evolutionary journey into jazz and R&B as well. And Calvin, it's just great to have you here, my friend.
Great to be here with you again, Jacob.
I just wanted to. One of the fascinating things about your career was the beginning of the Black Jazz record label. It was founded by a guy named Gene Russell, and you were a leader on 2 albums and a sideman on several others. And I wanted you to talk about Gene Russell's philosophy. Bless him, he's not with us anymore, but I wanted you to talk about his philosophy and what was his mission in creating a real Afrocentric jazz label.
Well, like, his was just like everybody else's. See, that was one of the reasons I moved to Los Angeles, was to record and get me a record out on my own. And that was my objective. So I left, after working with Frank all them years. We never did record. I worked with Frank from 1961 through 1964, 65, 66. And we never did do any recording. We were just working and, making $150 a week during that time was